Hi everybody. Today I'm here to do a reading progress update for March 29th to April 5th. I will first talk about two books that I finished recently that are going to be reviewed in the From Manhattan to Stars Hollow TBR retrospective video that Kathleen and I will be filming at Double House in a few weeks on April 26th. The first book we're going to be reviewing in our wrap-up in our video that we're jointly reviewing is Business Casual, which is the fourth book in the Love Light Farm series by B.K. Borison. This book was selected for the TBR because Love Light Farms has a similar small town vibe to Stars Hollow, Connecticut, and this couple, Nora and Charlie, is very similar to Monica and Chandler. The next book that we are going to be reviewing in our podcast episode is Abby Jimenez's new release, The Night We Met, which is the second book in the series with Say You'll Remember Me. This book was released a couple of weeks ago on March 24th, and I will not share what my rating is because Kathleen and I are going to be discussing our ratings in the podcast episode, which is being filmed at Double House on April 26th, and the video will be out May 8th at 6 a.m. Now into my current reads and progress. The first book I wanted to talk about is Supernatural Nevermore. This is a TV tie-in book with the TV show Supernatural. It was selected for the Friends and Gilmore Girls TBR because Jared Padalecki, who plays Dean Forrester on Gilmore Girls, also played Sam Winchester on Supernatural. And Supernatural, honestly, this is my preferable series about demon hunting or vampires as opposed to the Twilight movies and Twilight books. I just also recently started to watch Buffy the Vampire Slayer. I picked up this book because of Gabby, because she read it in her recent YouTube video, which I will try to link in the description box, of books that she read that tie in with TV shows. This book, as I said, is a TV tie-in, and it ties in with season 3. The season 3 episodes Crossword Blues and Corrosion. From the library today, I picked up Turtles All the Way Down by John Green. This is by the same author as Paper Towns and The Fault in Our Stars. And this story focuses on a 16-year-old girl named Asa who has OCD. She never intended to pursue the mystery of fugitive billionaire Russell Pickett, but there's a $100,000 reward at stake, and her best and most fearless friend, Daisy, is eager to investigate. So together, they navigate the short distance and broad divides that separate them from Russell Pickett's son, Davis. Asa is trying. She is trying to be a good daughter, a good friend, a good student, and maybe even a good detective, while also living within the ever-tightening spiral of her own thoughts. In his long-awaited return, John Green, the acclaimed award-winning author of Looking for Alaska and A Fault in Our Stars, shared Asa's story with shattering and flinching clarity in his brilliant novel of love, resilience, and lifelong friendship. This book is selected for the From Manhattan to Stars Hollow TBR because the main character in this book has OCD like Monica. The next book I'm reading is The Book of Lost Names by Kristen Harmel. This is let's see. I know that I have read a couple of other books by this author. I have read The Sweetness of Forgetting, and The Room on Rue Amélie. She writes a lot of historical fiction books that are set during World War II, which of course is my favorite history time to read about. And I started this book on Saturday. I am currently on chapter 6. The next book that I picked up from the library today is called Chronically Dolores by Maya Van Wegenen. I found this on a reading list on Instagram recently about books that have disabled protagonists. The main character in this book, Dolores, has irritable bowel syndrome, which I had not heard about until I saw the movie with Matthew Perry and Lauren Graham in it called Birds of America last year with Kathleen. So I just started this book before I went to the Boys and Girls Club today, and I am on page 112, chapter 11. The next book I borrowed from my mother-in-law. It's called Black Cake by Charmaine Wilkinson. I do not remember who on YouTube has read this, but I definitely heard about it from one of the many booktubers I follow. If I can remember who that was, I will tag the video with a review in the description. In present-day California, Eleanor Bennett's death leaves behind a puzzling inheritance for her two children, Byron and Benny. A traditional Caribbean black cake made from a family recipe and a long history and a voice recording. In her message, Eleanor shares a tumultuous story about a headstrong young swimmer who escapes her island home under suspicion of murder. The heartbreaking tale Eleanor unfolds. In this, the secrets she still holds back and the mystery of a long-lost child challenge everything that siblings thought they knew about their identities and themselves. Can Byron and Benny reclaim their once close relationship, piece together Eleanor's true history, and fulfill her final quest to share the black cake when the time is right? Will their mother's revelations bring them back together, or leave them feeling more lost than ever? Charmaine Wilkinson's debut novel is a story of how the inheritance of betrayals, secrets, memories, and even names can shape relationships and history. Deeply evocative and beautifully written, Black Cake is an extraordinary journey through the life of a family changed forever by the choices of its matriarch. I really love this author's writing style so far. I am on page 128. The next book I'm reading I borrowed from my neighbor Kathleen. It is the fourth book in the Cuban Saga series by Chanel Clayton called The Most Beautiful Girl in Cuba. In this portion of the series, we follow Evangelina Cisneros and Grace Harrington, and they are journalists who live in the Gilded Age, New York City. And this focuses on the newspaper tycoon William Randolph Hearst. And is this the person who owns the ABC company? Because the name Hearst sounds really familiar. So if you can answer that question for me, that would be great. And I have really loved Chanel Clayton's writing style. And as a person who went to college to study journalism, I can really connect to Grace and Evangeline's characters in this book, and I have really loved following their story. I am currently on chapter 37, and I'm hoping to finish this book when tomorrow or Wednesday so I can give it back to Kathleen. The next book is another book I borrowed from my mother-in-law, Sally. It's called The Book of Longings by Sue Monk Kidd. This is a book by the author of The Secret Life of Bees, which I read several years ago. I have it on my bookshelf. I just haven't read it in years, and I think I may read that book again once I finish this one. So in this story, we follow Anna, a rebellious, ambitious, gifted young woman who secretly writes the stories of silenced women and longs to bring forth the largeness inside her. She is raised in a wealthy family with ties to the ruler of Galilee and is expected to marry a rich older widower. An encounter with 18-year-old Jesus changes everything. The marriage unfolds in Nazareth, where Anna, a home with Jesus and his family. As her pent-up longings intensify, she is sustained by her fearless Aunt Yaltha, who harbors a compelling secret. But when Anna commits a brazen act that puts her in peril, she flees to Alexandria, where startling revelations and greater dangers unfold. Grounded in meticulous research, The Book of Longings is an unforgettable account of one woman's fierce struggle to realize the passion and potential. It is a novel of astounding emotional power and beauty from a writer at the height of her acclaimed narrative gifts. So Sally let me borrow this book when I went to their house for Easter yesterday, and I think this book connects well to the Easter holiday because it's about Nazareth and Jesus. And I started this book last night. I am on page 110. The next book I am about to finish is Catherine Cowles' new release from March 3rd, Across the Vanishing Sky. This is the first book in her new romantic suspense series, Starlight Grove, which I'm really excited to start. I can't wait to see what happens in book 2. In this book, we are following the adventures of Broyden Winslow, who never expected to return to Starlight Grove, the town that took everything away from her. Now, after her best friend, the one who sacrificed so much for her, vanished without a trace, but with a young son to raise in the past that won't stay buried. Bray is back and determined to uncover the truth. She just didn't count on the brooding, reclusive mountain man living next door. Dex Archer is the stuff of local legend, silent, rugged, and surrounded by whispers of his and his brother's violent father. But Bray sees through the scowl and the parentage of the man beneath, fiercely loyal and unexpected, kind and just dangerous, to protect her when someone starts warning her off her search. The closer she gets to the truth, the harder it is to stay away from Dex. And as things get more perilous, Bray realizes that the only person she can rely on is the one man she swore never to trust again. Only someone isn't happy that Bray has been digging, and they'll do anything to stop her. But Dex, he'll do anything to save her, even slip back into the dark. I have really loved seeing the relationship between Bray and Dex develop. And I just love the setting of her books. I also need to finish the other mystery series that Catherine Cowles wrote, Sparrow Falls, which I started last June when I read Fragile Sanctuary, because the couple in that book describes Monica and Chandler just like the couple in Business Casual does. The next book I am about to finish is The Midnight Book Club by E.W. Anderson. As I mentioned in my video from last week, the other day when we were downtown, this author was at Grump Sunshine Books, and she actually autographed the book for me. Where is it? Right here. So yeah, it was very nice to meet another local author. This book takes place in London, and it focuses on this writer named Aurelia Lindham, who inherits a bookstore from her dead aunt. And at night, the characters from classic books, such as Little Women and Wuthering Heights and Jane Eyre, come to life. And I have really enjoyed this. Having just recently seen the play of Little Women, I especially like seeing the characters from that book come to life, because in that book, I connect the most to Jo, because she's a writer, and to Beth, because she loves music, and those characters are very similar to Rory and Lane from Gilmore Girls. I should finish this book tomorrow. I'm on page 298 right now, and I only have less than 100 pages left. The next book I got out of the library in recent weeks is How to Kill a Guy in 10 Dates. This is a rom-com slasher. So this is similar to the book Better Than the Movies by Lynn Painter, but instead of quoting rom-com quotes from movies, they are quoting horror quotes at the beginning of each chapter, which is fun. This is about a murder mystery that happens at a speed dating event. And a couple of people have talked about this in their monthly wrap-ups. I know Gabby read it, and I believe also that Carly at the Pastel Bookshelf read it, and they gave it between 4 and 5 stars. So I'm really excited to get farther into this. I'm currently on chapter 8 at the moment, page 63. The next book I'm currently reading was recommended to me by Gabby at Gabby Reads. She did this book in her Spin the Wheel book, where she got a prompt about pick a book with the author of her name, which is Gabriella. I don't remember what she gave this book as a rating, but it focuses on Angela and Crystal. Crystal is asexual, and I really like her character in the way she's written. Currently I am on chapter 19, page 165. The next book I'm reading is Long Island, the sequel to Brooklyn by Colm Tobin. I read Brooklyn last week. I borrowed it from Kathleen, and this is the sequel that is set in Long Island. And this book was selected for the Friends and Gilmore Girl TBR because of the episode at the end of season 4, or at the beginning of season 3 and beginning of season 4, where they go to the beach so Phoebe can find her birth mother, because the beach house is on Long Island. Currently in this book, I am on part 2, page 73. The next book I recently got from the library is My Husband's Wife by Alice Feeney. This is Alice Feeney's new release from the end of January. This is about a woman named Eden who returns after a run to find out that she's locked out of her house, and she finds her husband with another woman who claims her name is Eden, and she lives in her house. And I have heard great things about this book from other booktubers who have reviewed it. Gabby and Rhonda picked it for their January book club book. And I can't wait to go back and rewatch their live shows. This book took like 2 months to get off the whole list at the library, and I'm so excited that it finally came in last week. Currently in My Husband's Wife, I am on chapter 12, page 62. A book I am currently rereading for the From Manhattan to Stars Hollow TBR is Left of Forever by Tara DeWitt. This is my third time rereading this book. I'm rereading this book because it is getting closer to the release of book 3, which releases in August. And this book focuses on Ren and Ellis, who is a couple that have fallen out of love, and it's a second chance romance as they drop their son off at college. And this was on a book recommendation list for Friends and Gilmore Girls characters for Emily and Richard. And it pairs up with the episode I have not seen yet, where they renew their wedding vows. Currently in my reread of Left of Forever, I am on chapter 22, page 182. The next book I am currently rereading is A Wrinkle in Time by Madeline L. Angel. This is my second time rereading this book. The first time I read it was 2 or 3 years ago because we saw the play at Kennebunk High School. It was their fall musical. And I've also seen the movie that has Oprah Winfrey in it. This book was really popular when I was a kid, but I didn't read it when I was younger. I think maybe it was because the themes were too mature. Currently in my reread, I am on chapter 8, page 127. I am likely to finish this tonight or tomorrow. And this book was on a book recommendation list of books that are paired up with characters from Buffy the Vampire Slayer. It is paired up with Buffy's sister Dawn, so I am reading it to honor the death from last year of Michelle Trachtenberg. Now we're getting into the finished books for the Manhattan to Stars Hollow TBR that I'm reading individually. The first book that I have read recently for the From Manhattan to Stars Hollow TBR that I put together separately from the podcast is Love and Lobsters. Obviously, this goes with the whole "He's your lobster" quote that Phoebe says in the prom video episode. This is about a newspaper artist who writes an article about how to connect with lobster behavior, which goes viral on the internet. And I really loved following this girl's story because she's obviously a blogger that writes about romance, and she writes about the whole thing that Phoebe talks about lobsters mating for life, which I don't really think is true. I feel like the whole mating for life thing connects to swans and not lobsters. I gave this book 4 stars, and I don't think I added it to my list on Storygraph, so I will be updating that quickly. The next book I recently read is The Book Woman of Troublesome Creek by Kim Michelle Richards, and I actually just picked up another book by this author at the library today called it's another book about libraries or books that I just got out of the library today. I have it in there. It will be talked about in another video. So this book is set in the 1800s, and our main character's name is Cussie. She's not only a bookwoman, she's one of the last of her kind. Her skin is shade of blue, unlike most anyone else. Not everyone is keen on Cussie's family or the government's new book program, and along with her treacherous route, Cussie faces doubters at every turn. If Cussie wants to bring joy of books back to the complex and hard-crabble Kentuckians, she's going to have to comfort dangers and prejudice as old of the Appalachians and suspicion deep as the holler. Inspired by the true blue-skinned people of Kentucky and the brave, dedicated Kentucky Packhouse Library Service of the 1930s, the book Woman of Troublesome Creek is a story of raw courage, fierce strength, and one woman's belief that books can carry us anywhere, even back home. I really loved this book, and this author is also a new-to-me author, so I'm actually looking forward to reading another book by her that I just picked up from the library today, which is called The Bookwoman's Daughter. So I gave this book 4.5 stars, and for the discussion question, I think I will answer. Let me find it. Cussie has to deal with the loss of many loved ones in a very short amount of time. How do you think she handles her grief? Which loss was the most difficult for you to read? I mean, I didn't keep track of how many people she lost over the course of the book. It was a lot of people to keep track of, but I think she handled her grief pretty well given her situation. How do you think Cussie's father feels after he marries her after an abusive man? Why do you think he agrees to Charlie Fraser's proposal in the first place? What do you imagine life was like for an Underwood woman at that time? I mean, I hated this part of the plot when she was married off to the abusive man, because if I were in her shoes, I would just want to be single, because I would be very unhappy if I was married off to somebody who was abusive to me. Because I listened to this podcast on YouTube about reading Am I the Asshole Stories, which is called the Storytime Society. The host of that podcast is Jamie. She's younger than me, and she's really hilarious. Jamie, I love your podcast. I don't think you're watching my video, but if you are, hi. So in the Am I the Asshole Stories, she talks a lot about some stories that, like, one in today's episode of her podcast, she talked about this girl who was in an abusive relationship where her dad was sexualizing her and, like, spying on her in the shower and being really gross and disgusting and perverted, and her mother was doing nothing about it because the mother was actually being abused by her too, by saying, oh, you shouldn't tell anybody about what's going on with your dad because we don't want the police to know about it. So the dad was basically abusing the wife and the daughter and sexualizing the daughter and telling the mother to tell the daughter not to tell the police anything or not to tell family members anything. So this girl in this story is 17 and she has a little sister who's like 13. So she's trying to get custody of this little girl. So yeah, back to the book. I'm going on a tangent talking about Storytime Society episode. But yeah, I would not like to be in the situation that Cussie was in. I gave this book 4.5 stars. The next book I'm reading is by another new author to me. It's called The Time Hop Coffee Shop by Phaedra Patrick. So this book reminds me of The 7-Year Slip by Ashley Poston, but instead of having an apartment that goes back in time, we're in a coffee shop that goes back in time. And this is another story that deals with the theme of grief, because the main character deals with somebody in her family who passes away. Mapleview seems to offer Greta everything she longs for. What would your version of a perfect blend in life look like? Would you drink a cup of magical coffee to take you there? I think I would. I think I live in a pretty cool area, so I don't really think I would necessarily drink a magical cup of coffee to transport me anywhere, but if I could pick anywhere to be transported to, it would be the Central Perk Coffee House that just opened in New York in Times Square, which I'm hoping to go to at some point next year. The next discussion question from this book I want to answer is, at the end of the novel, what is your interpretation of the disappearance of Iris's coffee shop and Greta's discovery of the jade mortar and pestle? What do you imagine will happen next? Would you like to see a sequel to this story? So I don't want to spoil the ending for this book because I think you should read it and see what happens and see how the characters' relationship developed. But I really enjoyed following Iris's journey throughout this book. And also, the other character I like was the character who was really philosophical. I think that might have been Iris, actually. Yeah. Iris is a guarded rather than philosophical character. Did you warm to her? Did discovering she was once a nurse help you to understand her personality and intentions more? Yeah, I really liked how Iris viewed certain situations, and if there's a sequel to this book, I would like to see how her relationships with other people develop, because I really loved how she connected to the characters in this book. And as far as a sequel, yeah, that's what I would like to see in a sequel, so I hope there's a part 2 to this book. I gave it 5 stars. The last 2 books that I read in the past week were rereads for me. The first one was The Bright Years by Sarah Damhoff. This was a book that I heard about because Sarah Caroli talked about it. She read it last year when it was first released, and then she read it again for her 5-star blog that she posted at the beginning of January. She talked about it in her wrap-up for 2025. It was her top book of 2025, so of course I had to read it again. And I gave this book 4 stars. We focus in this book on Lillian and Ryan, and we follow them throughout their lives and how their family deals with addiction. And I read this book on my TBR for substance use disorder, which also includes When the World Sings Up, which I'm reading in August, Friends, Lovers, and a Big Terrible Thing, which I'm paused from reading right now. I'm currently on chapter 6. I will get back to that sooner rather than later. I'm just trying to get other books out of the way first before I go back to it. It's not like I haven't read that before. I've read that 4 other times. So sometimes it's great to take a bit of a break. And the last book I reread in the past couple of weeks was The House in the Cerulean Sea by T.J. Klune. I love T.J. Klune's books. He is such a good writer. I love being immersed in his world. This book was a 5-star read to me. The sequel, which came out last year, Somewhere Beyond the Sea, was also 5 stars. This book was on a friend's recommendation list for Phoebe, and I think it describes her perfectly well. The character that reminds me the most of her is named Lucy, and she is an orphan at the orphanage that our main character, Linus, works at. And she is an orphan who comes to the orphanage after losing both of her parents. I will read you her dossier, her description. Lucifer, nicknamed Lucy. 6 years, 6 months, 6 days at the time of this report. Hair, black. Eye color, blue-red. Mother, unknown, believed deceased. Father, the devil. Species of magical youth. Antichrist. So the reason why I think this character connects to Phoebe is because she loses her mom. And we all know that in Friends, Phoebe loses her mom to suicide when she was 13. And I think it's very interesting that this character is also the Antichrist, because I feel like there's a horror movie, I think it's called The Omen, that has a character that's a child that is the Antichrist. I haven't seen that movie, but so I gave this book 5 stars, and I gave the sequel 5 stars as well. And before I sign off, I just wanted to share a fan theory that connects to Phoebe that I have heard about in a couple of different YouTube videos that I have been watching about fan theories. And this theory is kind of sad. And in one video I watched about fan theories, Marta Kaufman, who is one of the directors of Friends, actually said that this theory is very sad and very terrible, but she didn't really confirm whether or not it was true. So I want to know what you guys think. So this theory states that Phoebe is a drug addict, and she is looking inside Central Perk and seeing Rachel, Joey, Monica, Chandler, and Ross sitting on the couches and living their lives and having a good time. So her whole, basically the whole entire show is her inserting herself into the adventures of these 6 complete strangers. And the reason why this theory could be true is because in the episode from season 5, the one with the Kips, Rachel literally says to Phoebe, "You would just lift right out of the group because you have no connection to us." So that is the part where the reality starts to break. And the finale is basically Phoebe waking up from her fantasy and realizing that it isn't real. So do you guys think that theory is true? I think it's one of the saddest Friends fan theories I have ever heard. So share your thoughts on those fan theories and these books in the comments below. I'm looking forward to hearing what you have to say. And also stay tuned for the next podcast episode for reviews on these 2 books. And we will also be reviewing, let's see, Dewey the Library Cat, West Side Story, and the Pumpkin Spice Cafe. I think those are the rest of the books that we're reviewing. So thank you for tuning in. My next reading update video will be out on April 20th at 7 p.m. And then on the 25th, Matt and I will be doing our 2-part entertainment wrap-up video. Part 1 will be movies and TV shows. Part 2 will be books. And then, as I just said, the podcast episode for the retrospective documentary of the From Manhattan to Stars Hollow TBR podcast will be on Kathleen's channel on May 8th. Thank you for tuning in to another long-winded reading progress video. Have a great night, everybody.